Pecha Kucha 317, changing to another book. So I think I've put my pieces in order, and I can effectively go forward with making a book that's shorter and maybe has more of a definable point, which will give me an excuse to stop working on the book I am, because the idea is I'll come up with a better book by the end of it. I also read from my personal collection some of the Punisher Max series written by Garth Ennis. He really is one of my favourite writers. It's rather brutal what he writes. This is the kind of stuff you could make a movie or TV show out of in your sleep. It's a story that is self-contained and begins with the Punisher surviving a bombing of an Irish pub behind him, and then figuring out who the people are who did it and killing a bunch of criminals, right? Because that's what the Punisher does. And it's made up of a cast of just criminals that are from the neighborhood, including this guy who is like the most obviously visually striking. He's a ex-IRA terrorist who's come in search of some money, who accidentally blew himself up once, and that's why he doesn't have a face. He's arguably the big bad. But it's also about an old man who used to run the neighborhood, who's sent all these other criminals on a wild goose chase for a fortune that doesn't exist. And, you know, a lot of people get shot in the process. All self-contained stories should be so good. Unlike the other stuff I've been trying to muscle my way through. The thing with this H.P. Lovecraft book is it's like 800 pages long. And every individual story is a little bit more tedious than the last one to read. They're several pages long, typically from 1 page to 4, maybe to 6. And H.P. Lovecraft uses the same tropes, and they're only tired in the sense that it's all I see him do. And I haven't done any art this week because I find it's easier to read a story and then just like try and speed read another one. And by not getting tripped up on all the big words he uses, because ultimately what he's saying is the same thing he said the last time. You know, not every story is exactly the same, and since there's another 750 odd pages to go, I'm sure there's stuff in here that has legitimate merit. It's just that this is the first book I've attempted to read in some time, and I don't like giving up on books, even if I find them to be hardly as bombastic, dynamic, or entertaining as Punisher or some random stuff I see on YouTube. I don't know. I think I'm on the fence about if I'm just going to go back to the library, get some more graphic novels, and dump this thing in the return bin anyway. We shall see. I could use it as an excuse to write some short stories of myself, but I don't know that you could write a story in 6 pages and have it actually go anywhere. I saw the second episode of Sherlock, which was a bit of a disappointment as well. The first episode is just really very good, and it works arguably as a standalone thing. It obviously leads into the show, but the second episode very much felt like it was a TV show. Entertainment, suspension of disbelief had to be higher, because it felt like the norms that this police procedural goes to are quite extreme. I say that as someone who watches Columbo quadruple bills every Sunday. I also did a Bison, where I thought, let's try and not phone it in with the calligraphy pen for a week. And I was just trying to give him a face that looks like it has three-dimensionality. That nose is very Michael Jackson-y. I was trying to do something with it being like a worm's eye view, and I just haven't shaded the nose properly, and I haven't noticed, because the whole point of these things is I'm in and out. I also saw a playthrough of what might be the most controversial video game ever made. I'm not sure this thing was released. I'm not even going to talk about it, except to say that not only does it look terrible, but it's full of some of the most bizarre and controversial ideas, and the representations of them I've ever seen. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it went. But, you know, as I've been trying to figure out the ins and outs of this second book, I will try to finish because it's shorter. I've got most of the story, most of the premise, and most of the events. And this week I was trying to just see if it could survive me trying to visualize some of the core cast. The main character is basically the premise is it's a superhero book where the main character is a hero who crosses some kind of line and can be construed as a villain, but it's not so clear cut. And I have a few ideas about how the art style should be. I want it to kind of be this thing that's got heavy blacks and it's got kind of quite a muted approach when it comes to the coloring. I'm also trying to figure out like how I can work in various kind of things about superheroes that people who like superhero books will appreciate, while this is still very much a postmodern book that is really about what happens when superheroes are forced to live in the real world. Nothing bloody groundbreaking about that. We've been seeing the same fucking story for 30 years. But as I'm trying to actually come up with some of the core cast and their relationships with each other in a visual sense, I'm also trying to see if my abilities as an artist can at least ape the idea in my head. And I feel like when I just drop some G pen on top of some mechanical pencils, I start getting close to something that might be something I might like to see in the finished page. So I'm prepared to give it another couple of weeks, see if I can put everything together, and maybe I can get this put together and finished quite early into next year. Because I think next year is going to fundamentally be defined by me having to go back out into the world, the post-COVID world, and live in it actively, consciously, and make some bloody money off of it. You know, COVID cost me my last job. It might be a good idea to go get another one before I run completely out of money. But that's the end of Pecha Kucha 317, and I'll see you next time.